Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first of 4 interviews for the next Halifax Citadel-Sable Island debate. It's happening at the Sobey School in the McNally, Maine. It's hosted by SMUSA, the Sobey School Community Revitalization and Prosperity Network, and the Sobey School of Business. And today we have our first candidate that we're interviewing. It is NDP candidate Lisa Lachance. Lisa, it's very nice to have you today. So let's just get into it. Let's just start the first question. And why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running in the riding of Halifax Citadel-Sable Island?
Great, thanks so much. So I realized after months on the campaign trail that I should be able to soundbite this answer. But I think, I'm reflecting on that every day as I go forward. So it's just been an incredible privilege to have this time to go into community and to hear from folks. All my life I've worked towards positive social change. I'm passionate about social justice and equity. I've worked in government. I've worked at Dow Housing, managing a national network on child and youth mental health. I've worked with community-based organizations across the country, including ones more focused on services and others at the advocacy level. I've been a stay-at-home parent. And I'm a small business owner. And so I feel like I've seen the world through lots of different lenses. And I think all those sectors have a role to play in supporting the well-being of our community. So I'm running now because I think, on one hand, I have all this, sort of perspectives to bring to bear. I also think in terms of the post-pandemic world, I'm incredibly optimistic about the future of this neighborhood and our city and our province. But I also think that it's a chance to make change. And that's what I've really been hearing, across the country in my work, which I do a lot of community and youth engagement nationally. And then, since starting to go door to door in our neighborhood, I think the pandemic exposed a lot of inequities and challenges in our community. It also demonstrated that actually when we have to respond, we can all come together and respond quickly and effectively. And I think there's a whole generation of young people in particular who are like, oh, okay, so government, you actually can make a change with regards to, your climate change actions or social welfare, whatever, what have you. These are choices that are being made. So now we know that we can push for solutions. So that's that's where I'm coming from with this. So, I consider myself a parent advocate as well. So over the last few years, really having to advocate for the services that my family needs in terms of youth mental health and education. I don't have this great story where, we fought really hard and we got the system to respond. I mean, the answer is that we fought really hard and we didn't get the system to respond. And thankfully our family and our kids are doing well despite that. But, I think that's not the way that I want our society to work. So yeah, also bringing that perspective as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lisa, for your answer. Now, the next question that we have for you is if you had to pick one issue, because we know it's a very challenging question, but if you had to pick one issue in this election that's the most important to you, what would that be and why?
So I'm not going to answer your question directly because I am going to say it's all integrated, it's all linked, and this is actually what stops government a lot of times from making changes. Is so I've worked at the Department of Finance here in Nova Scotia. I've worked on international files for the federal government as well at the Privy Council office. So I have a sense of how all this works. And the huge challenge is that we have a system that's based on different sectors of society in our community, but that's not how issues play out in the real world. So my first thing is that's actually what has gotten us into a mess here is that we haven't dealt with social equity issues, we haven't dealt with the environment, we haven't dealt with the economy in ways that actually reflect what happens out in the real world, so that our economic choices have health and environmental impacts, hopefully positive, sometimes negative. We need to know what they are. So that's really, but I'm also not naive enough to say that it's not that's that easy to do in government. So I know that part too. So in terms of one issue, I think probably with that really long preamble, I would say, probably addressing issues of inequity are at the basis of us, going forward as a community. So going forward in health and education and in the economy. So I don't think we can run an economy any longer, ignoring the environmental impacts which impact people in their daily lives, and without addressing issues around inequity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this next question is kind of a similar question, I guess. But essentially, if you were elected and chosen by the people of Halifax Citadel-Sable Island to serve as their next MLA, what would be some of the first legislation that you and the NDP would sponsor in the legislature, and why do you think that legislation is important to get done very soon?
So I know that some of the items that we would do immediately, so are really important, and I'm more convinced than ever, again, after spending months talking to folks all around our neighborhood, are key now. So I think the NDP has led on signaling that we're in a housing crisis. I think that the pandemic has welcomed everybody into that call for justice, the recognition that across all different ways that we have a housing crisis. And while there's temporary rent control, I think one of the first actions of the new legislature under an NDP government would be to implement permanent rent control that absolutely allows for the right, the right level of increases for property maintenance and that sort of thing, but also gives folks security and the ability to plan. Because I will say that I hear every day people who either have already had to move because their housing changed, folks who are worried about the end of temporary rent control and what that impact will be. And, and I just have to say, these aren't folks, often these are young professionals who, often regularly kind of disclose their annual salary and note that, it shouldn't be an issue. And so, but it is an issue in Halifax and in our neighborhood in particular, in terms of housing. Definitely raising the minimum wage. I have only been able to read a bit about the leaders debate. I wasn't watching it, but I know that, Gary Burrell says something about, paying taxes and paying the right wages. And, I'm a small business owner. I understand the demands, but I also know that in my negotiations with clients, I've made sure that we pay our employees a livable wage. And so I think the bare minimum we can do is enact a $15 minimum wage immediately, but then we need to work towards a livable wage. And that will support our community well-being in so many different ways. So I think that's really important. I think a hot topic is inaction on environment and climate change. So, stopping the sale of Owl's Head, really understanding what our our definitions of provincial parks, what are we protecting? What do we need to protect? And I don't know if this is a legislative need to respond, but definitely implementing the Leahy report.
Absolutely. Lisa, thank you so much. Now, the next question is obviously personal to a lot of the people that are going to be watching the debate on August 5th. And this one is kind of for students. So for the students that are watching this interview right now, what are the NDP going to do and you going to do as an MLA to help students in the area and make their lives easier?
Well, I think these two first actions in terms of permanent rent control and enhanced action on affordable housing are really important. Our neighborhood has always been, so full of students from different schools, and we want that to continue. But, I think that actually living in our neighborhood is becoming out of reach for a lot of students. So I think that first and foremost, minimum wage, again, helps folks when they're, working and earning money for tuition. We're also talking in the NDP, and I would say this is the other story that I hear so much is about healthcare and folks not being able to access healthcare. And I think, when folks start to look at where they want to build their lives, they want to know that they have a health system that can support them and going forward. And we have a particular emphasis on mental health, which is an area also that I'm particularly active and engaged in. So same day, next day mental health care for everyone. And I know this is possible because it's happening across the country. It's what I'm studying in my PhD, are called integrated youth services, and for 12 to 25-year-olds, but it can be definitely community-wide. So I think that, and then as well, action on tuition fees. So, moving towards making NSCC tuitions, maybe even making NSCC tuition free as a goal. So, so those are some of the issues that I would say we would move on that affect students.
Thank you, Lisa, so much. And the last question is just a little bit of a fun one. So if you want to just tell us a little fun fact about yourself and something that can help people kind of connect with you as a political figure.
Sure. I was trying to think of what fun fact would be fun to share, but I'll tell two facts. You might have seen me doing this a little bit during our chat today. I have 5 cats. It's too much. We used to we foster cats from the SPCA, and anyways, somehow I have a family of 4, and we're all attached to different cats. So we have 5 cats, a dog, a bird, a hamster, and a fish at this point. So we're we've got a lot of animals here. But I think the other thing that is probably useful for students to know is that I'm still a student. So I'm in the 4th year of my PhD. I keep going back to school. So, that's why I moved to Halifax. Like so many students, I moved to Halifax to go to Dalhousie. It was the right fit at the right time. My mom was a single mom, and I didn't want to be very far away from her. So she was in the valley, and Halifax was the big city where I could come to school. Came back to Dal again for my master's, and then 20 years later, so never say never, I came back and started my PhD.
That's a great fact. Now you said you had a set. Oh yeah, the animals and the PhD. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's great, Lisa.
Yeah.
So I just want to say thank you so much on behalf of all SMU students, the Sobey School of Business, and of course the Sobey Community Revitalization and Prosperity Network. We're very excited to be hosting you on Thursday, August 5th. Again, folks, for those that are just kind of watching this video now, right below in the description of the video, you can click on the link that'll take you right to the live stream. So we're very, very excited to have you there. And of course, there's going to be a portion on the live stream for you to ask your questions right at the end of the debate. So yeah, very excited to see you, Lisa, very soon on Thursday. So I hope you're excited.
Adrian, this wasn't in your list of questions, but can I add one thing? That I was the VP of the Dallas Student Union in my undergrad. And so I spent time organizing a debate in the McGinnis room of the Dallas sub for the 1993 federal election is one that I remember, and spent a lot of time, camped out in the premier's office protesting various tuition increases. So, so I was so thrilled to see the invite coming from SMUSA. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and looking forward to the debate.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. We'll see you then.